Welcome to Cue the Magic, Sing a New Song, a podcast that explores how music therapy can break barriers, spark connections, and change your child's life. I am your host, Angie Kopshai, a music therapy expert and the founder of the Global Music Therapy Project, a nonprofit organization dedicated to utilizing music's therapeutic power to enhance the lives of kids and parents just like you on a global level. I always say that music therapy is this miraculous thing that's not miraculous at all. It's science, and you'll be blown away by how simple it is. I am here to help you learn the techniques you need to create a happier, healthier household. Let's tune in together and cue the magic. Hey everyone, thanks for joining us. I'm your host, Angie Kopshai, and today we're diving into this week's Try This tip, unlocking the superpower of expectant waiting. When working with someone who faces processing challenges, there's a hidden superpower we can tap into, patient, expectant waiting. It's about stepping into their world and attuning to the subtle cues within the silence. In those moments of stillness, we can uncover a wealth of knowledge and strength. We can connect, encourage, and wait for a response, all without saying a word. Many of our music therapy songs are designed with built-in guidance, making spoken instruction completely unnecessary. And instead of saying, "Good job, awesome, I'm so proud of you," when they do exactly what you knew they could, try showing it with your body language and facial expressions. Save all those beautiful words for the very end and sing some sort of celebratory good job song together. This is your moment to wrap them up in lyrics filled with joy and love and pride. Expectant waiting isn't just a technique, it's a mindset shift. When we embrace silence, holding space with anticipation and encouragement, we create an environment where authentic communication can blossom in its own time. And this fosters deeper connection, understanding, and unlocks hidden potential within those who communicate differently. But remember, the power of silence isn't passive. It's an act of expectant waiting that invites connection and empowers communication on their terms. I know this is easier said than done, so I encourage you to start with one activity a day where you're practicing expectant waiting with great intention, patience, and grace for yourself and for your kiddo. I can't wait to hear how this goes for you, so please share your successes and your challenges. And we'll see you next week for another Try This tip. Hey everyone, we have big news. The Global Music Therapy Project has finally been approved to host the ultimate PDX bingo game show. Think bingo meets game show madness with a late night twist. Win cash, score amazing prizes, and support a great cause. The proceeds go towards expanding the reach of the Global Music Therapy Project and making a real difference in the lives of children and families around the world, all while having a great time. Join our mailing list at pdxbingo.com to be the first to know when tickets drop. We can't wait to see you there. Welcome back to Cue the Magic, Sing a New Song. I'm your host, Angie Kopshai, and today I am beyond excited to introduce an incredible guest, Stephanie Leavell. Stephanie is an award-winning songwriter, music therapist, and the brilliant mind behind Music for Kiddos, an online education company that offers high-quality music resources and continuing education for music therapists, educators, and parents. A graduate of Berklee College of Music, Stephanie is deeply passionate about using music as a tool to help kids succeed. She specializes in working with babies and young children up to age 10, creating engaging, effective, and meaningful musical experiences that truly make a difference. Get ready, because today Stephanie will share her insights, expertise, and some of the magic behind her work. Let's dive in. Welcome to Cue the Magic, Sing a New Song. I'm your host, Angie Kopshai, and today I am thrilled to be interviewing Stephanie Leavell. Stephanie, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
Can you start by telling us how you ended up in music therapy?
Sure. I grew up in a musical family. I thought everybody could sing in harmony. And played instruments all day long and everything like that. My parents were in a rock band growing up, so I just very much had a musical upbringing. And when it was time to go to college, I ended up going to college to be a composition major. And my sophomore year, discovered music therapy, ended up transferring to Berklee College of Music, where I studied music therapy, and just was absolutely hooked from the first class of Music Therapy 101. And while I was there, I specialized in medical music therapy, and ended up starting a program in my hometown, Boise, Idaho, at the local children's hospital, and did a lot of different things there. I worked there for many, many years. There wasn't a lot of music therapy in Boise at the time, so I had a private practice. I started other programs, and what I discovered is that I liked to build programs and start programs and be a part of that process. So let's see, about 8 years ago, so I've been a music therapist for 15 years, and about 8 years ago, our family moved across the country to Indiana, so my husband could do a PhD at Purdue University, and I found myself in a preschool setting, being my daughter's preschool teacher in a Montessori school that was pre-K through third grade, and ended up being the music teacher for their whole school. And so I've done a lot of different things, from one-on-one music therapy, medical music therapy, music in a sensory integration center, to a classroom music teacher. And while I was a classroom music teacher, I started a company called Music for Kiddos, and started recording my songs and recording my music that I use with kids and sharing it with music therapists and music educators. So that's a whirlwind.
I love that you identify yourself as someone who likes to build programs, because that's not something for everyone.
That's right. Yeah.
It's a big deal for the music therapy industry in general, for people. So that's awesome.
Yeah. I thought I was kind of a job hopper. I thought, what am I doing? Like, why can't I just be like content? You know, I loved the program that I started at the children's hospital, but I started getting antsy, and I used to get kind of down on myself, thinking, why am I wanting change again? And just realized that I don't know. I like the building process quite a lot.
I could see that. And you have built so much. I'm so excited to hear more about what you've built and created. Can you tell us more about why you think, what makes music therapy unique and something that parents can use with their kids?
I think my quick answer to this is that music is highly communicative, in non-verbal ways, in musical ways, in verbal ways with lyrics. There are so many elements to a song that can communicate. The rhythm can communicate, the melody, the harmonic structure can communicate, the lyrics, the groove, the notes that you're choosing from like an emotional component. So that's what I love about it. And a lot of the work that I do with kids, I like to say, like, I like to talk less and music more, you know?
I love that. I've never heard that. I love that. Yes. Yes. And we have to say that to parents a lot too, right?
Yes.
You know, like
Yes.
They always mean well. They want their kids to succeed so badly, but talk less, music more.
Yes. Yeah. Kids hear those verbal instructions all day long. And so sometimes it's difficult for parents or teachers or anybody to get the buy-in from them when they're hearing all these verbal instructions. It's like they stop hearing it, you know? And music is a really different way to communicate and a lot more fun. So you can get a lot easier buy-in from kids.
For sure. Do you have any go-to rhythm songs that you use with kiddos?
Yeah, sure. I have one that's a boomwhacker song. Oh, well, let me do one that's just like you could do with anything. I have a boomwhacker song that's a lot of fun. I have one that's just a drum song, and I don't know if you can hear me clapping. It just goes, I hear the drum play, I hear the drum play, now stop. I hear the drum play, I hear the drum play, now stop. I hear it softly, I hear it softly, a little bit louder, a little bit faster. Now rumble, and then you rumble on the drum and stop, and it's really adaptable. It's like theme and then do whatever you want. Theme, do whatever you want.
Love it. So when would you use this song?
That kind of song I would probably use when there's like a medium amount of energy. I think that rhythm can be very, very grounding. It can kind of bring a lot of the attention in. That song has a lot of instructions in it. So giving kids instructions so that they're kind of following along kind of requires them to pay a little bit more attention and to engage a little bit more. So I would use that as kind of like a medium energy time. It wouldn't work in a high energy time because the attention would be really hard to grab and they might not need something bigger and a little bit more free and open for them to run around. But that's probably when I would use that.
And I feel like from what I've seen of your work, a couple of your gifts are around energy and then also around the power of silence. I feel like a lot of your creations, like even with the song that you just shared, like there's a significant amount, there's a stop there, and it's not just for a millisecond, like it's a decent amount of time. Can you say any more about assessing energy, the energy of a child or a group, and then the power of silence? And maybe those two don't go together all the time. But.
Yeah, I think they do. I think there's a lot of playfulness in music. And so there's a time and a place for a steady beat, like for that feeling of grounding and kind of organizing. I think that steady beat. And there's also a very playful place in music, I think, for space and the unexpected. So the beautiful thing about space is that it can be in time or it can be out of time. And so you can have that space in time where that predictable, like sound coming back is predictable. Like, for example, people are at a wedding, everybody's dancing to the song, and there's a stop in the song, and everybody dancing stops. And then everybody starts again. And there's this like dynamic electric energy. It's like we all understood what was going on, and we all stopped and we all started again. And that's a very magical feeling. There's also kind of a funny, playful feeling of when that doesn't start again, when maybe kids are kind of expecting it, but it's a little longer than usual. And what I see from a lot of kids, especially kids who communicate more with eye contact, is when that amount of time becomes an unexpected pause, then their eyes will kind of look at me and they'll kind of raise their eyebrows like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? And so that is another connection point and another opportunity to be silly. And can I give you an example of that? Because it's kind of abstract.
Please.
So I have a song called Light a Candle, and you can sing it in time. So if your finger is a candle, imagine your finger being up, and then when you blow it out, your finger goes down. So light a candle, blow it out. Light a candle, blow it out. Light a candle, blow it out. Light a candle. Okay, so that's the theme. Really, really simple. And you'll notice I sang it mostly in time. It was pretty predictable, right? But you can go, light a candle, blow it out. Light a candle, blow it out. And kids like get closer to you. They start getting closer and they start going, what is she going to do? And this is a great one for, first of all, they're taking breaths. They're taking breaths and they're blowing it out. So it's a fun one to have it's a breathing song. But also it's a really fun one to bring in the attention because, you can make it fun and playful and unpredictable.
I love that. That's a great example. I'm wondering if you have maybe a little case study in a song that you used with a particular kiddo that you can share with us.
Yeah. So let me give the example of, it kind of goes along with what we were just talking about. A situation that sticks out in my mind where I, as a music therapist, and in this case, I was actually a music teacher, learned so much about music in a split second. It's really, using music as a transitional tool, as something to reinforce routine. And in one of my classes of 3 and 4-year-olds, I had about 20 kids, and I used one of my songs, I mean, pretty much every time as a transitional tool. And it's just this really simple walking song, where you do different movements. You can walk and then do different movements. And it just goes, we're gonna walk, walk, walk and stop. We're gonna walk, walk, walk and stop. Turn around, reach up, reach down. We're gonna walk, 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 and stop. And then you can play around with it in that way that I just described, where you can go, we're gonna jump, 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 and stop. We're gonna jump, 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 and stop. Kind of change the tempo and play around with that a little bit. But at the end of that song, every single time, I would sing to this class, sit down, which is a very clear cadence at the end. And music therapists use cadences to communicate, right? So very clear cadence to transition them to the next thing, and a wonderful tool for helping them get ready for whatever would be next, a book or something like that. And there was one time where I decided I was going to use that song as a different transition, and I was going to transition into something else. And so I didn't say the sit down, and the whole entire class sat down anyway. I was like transitioning to a new song, and all of a sudden they just sat down anyway. And I thought, oh, when I am consistent in a transition, in a musical transition, and then I'm interested in shifting that, like, nope, they got it. It is ingrained in their brains. It is part of the routine here. And I have to be mindful of my own, use of music there, because it works.
Yes. And that's such a great example. In the last interview I did with Emily Ross, like, we were talking about the same thing, and ultimately taking the music away a little bit. I mean, whether or not you did that intentionally, like,
right.
You didn't say the sit down, but they already knew exactly what they were supposed to do, whether you wanted them to or not. But
exactly. Yeah. And in a beautiful way, that's, that helps the classroom environment so much when you can rely on those musical cues.
Mm-hmm. I am wondering if you can sort of share what you think might help families create a rich musical environment at home.
I love this question. I had a very rich musical environment at home.
Did you say that your parents were in a band?
Yes. My parents were in a rock band growing up.
Like,
my
together?
Mom,
the same
yes,
band?
Together. Yes. They had a record deal and everything. But they decided, I was 6 at the time, and they were having to be out of town a lot and everything. And I had 2 other siblings, and they said every time they left, it was just so hard on the kids. They decided to just do something else. But yeah, they had a record deal, and I have memories of my dad was the drummer. My mom wrote a lot of the songs and sang with her sister. So they sounded a lot like Heart, like the 2 voices together. So good. And, but they decided to give that up when I was about 6. But I have great memories of being in the back with my coloring book, and while they were, doing their performances.
That's amazing. Sorry, I sidetracked there.
Musically
rich environment.
Yeah. For me, a musically rich environment is one without pressure. Like a really safe, musically rich environment. So that's maybe a part of, like, my definition there is what is the overall goal of a music rich environment at home? And I think for me, it is an avenue for self-expression and a way to connect with people. So that takes a lot of the pressure out of it, right? If we're saying music is to express yourself and music is to have a stronger bond with the people around you, then what a music-rich environment would look like is a lot of creativity. And it doesn't matter what the music sounds like. It matters what it feels like. And playfulness. I think it's really important for parents, if they want to create a music-rich environment, to be imperfect themselves, because, I think a lot about music, like, especially when you go study music at, like, a college level. If you miss 2 notes in your classical piece, you didn't perform it correctly, right? And is music really that? I just have a hard time believing that music is really that. So I think modeling that music is actually most commonly mistakes, as part of the process, I think modeling that is really, really important. And again, remembering what is the purpose of music: expression and connection, expression and connection. So
I love that. And one of the things I try to do all the time is encourage parents to, like, regardless of what your second grade teacher said about your singing voice, that's not what this is about. And really encouraging families to sing, like, even if you're at the grocery store, sing to your kiddo. And those people who are judging you, don't just ignore them. And I would love eventually for everyone to be like, oh, look what that amazing mom is doing. I'm so impressed with her.
Yes.
But it's so, yes, exactly what you're saying, without pressure, and imperfection is just a part of the process.
Yes. It's to be expected. And you're giving your kids such a gift if you can model imperfection to them. And music is a low stakes way to do that, you know?
What are some signs that parents should look for to know that music therapy is having a positive impact upon their child?
So if they are actively in music therapy, I think some of the things that you could look for, you could certainly look for an improvement in their goals and their objectives. Other things you could look for is their willingness to use music in other parts of their lives, their willingness to be being more interested in music, just in kind of their average daily life, but also seeking music, playing, like using instruments at home, using not instruments at home to make musical sounds, like upside down bowls and spoons and things like that. And again, them just kind of seeking music as an avenue for expression. I think those are some great signs that music therapy is having an impact on them.
Yeah. I feel like I hear a lot from parents like, oh, my kiddo is singing, like all of a sudden they're becoming more musical at home and using maybe something we did within a session in a different setting, but they're becoming more musical. And I feel like that's I love it when parents share that with me. And I'm like, yes, it's working. But
it's like you unlock a little magic in them. Yes.
Yeah, you flipped a switch and
yes.
Do you have, if a parent was to ask, how long will it take before I really start to see that music therapy is working for my kiddo? Do you have an answer for that?
Yeah, you may not directly notice immediately. And it may be months and months and months. Just like any other form of therapy, physical therapy, talk therapy, occupational therapy, we're building kind of a foundation of relationship, goals, objectives, things like that. And so it is a process and a really strong thing for a lot of music therapists. And I'm sure you agree, Angie, but tell me if you feel differently, is it has to exist in play when with kids. And so it may look like play. It may look like we aren't working on a particular goal, but we are. It is all building on this musical and relational foundation up from there.
Yes, I totally agree. And so you started out in the medical setting, right? And I was just talking to a mom this morning whose kiddo received music therapy while in the hospital. And we were talking about how music therapy was like the one thing where we didn't come in. First of all, you could say no, right?
Yes.
I mean, you could send us away. And we ideally were not hurting them. We weren't coming with an uncomfortable procedure. And we're there more for play. And we're really just all about letting them control the situation and be happy. Yes.
Sometimes a no in the hospital is the very most effective thing you can do as the music therapist in a hospital, is as a child saying no and you saying, okay, thanks for letting me know. and leaving because they cannot say no to the nurse. They cannot say no to the doctor. They can't say no to the dietitian. There are very, very few cases where they have that control, as you mentioned. And that's a huge adjustment when they're coming into the hospital, and it can be very uncomfortable. And so a lot of what a music therapist is doing in a hospital is normalizing the environment as much as possible with play, with choices, with creativity, and as a result of doing all of that, we can reduce anxiety, we can reduce pain perception, and all of that too.
Yes. Yes. How can parents get more involved in music therapy and potentially even incorporate music therapy techniques into their daily lives?
I think transitions are a great one. Using music for transitions to ease those transitions. For example, one example that I love to give is getting kids in the car. At least for me as a parent, that was really difficult, that transition. And I've heard the same from other parents that, leaving for school, etc. You can build it into music into your routine as part of that. So instead of yelling across the house or the apartment, it's time to go, to get in the car, it's time to go, have it in your routine that you have a particular song that is maybe funny and very fun to the kid, a particular song that means at the end of this song, this is like when you start putting your shoes on, right? That's the song of like, get your stuff ready, here we go. And the goal is when the song ends, we are either in the car or right there ready to get in the car. So routines, lullabies. I am a huge fan of lullabies. I think the connection point of a parent singing a lullaby to a child at nighttime, getting them peacefully in bed where they feel safe and they feel connected is a beautiful gift to give a child. Using concepts of the ISO principle. The ISO principle is a music therapy technique, and all that is matching kids where they are musically and then gradually shifting them where they want to go. So for example, if they're really, really high energy, go ahead and pick a high energy song, match their energy, let them move around, let them jump around and play around. And then, the next song, reduce that energy level a little bit. The next song, reduce it a little bit. The next song, reduce it a little bit. And pretty soon, you'll have a nice regulated child who's had the opportunity to move around, but is not maybe running around too much anymore. Has calmed down a bit.
Do you feel like when you use the ISO principle, do they know what you're doing? I mean, do you ever... So Marie Miller just talked about this, and she actually has a little app where she eventually slows down the tempo. She starts at 106, down to 102, down to 98, which I feel like I am wondering if you strive to be more subtle with the ISO principle, or if you're like, okay, we're calming down now, and we're going to take it a little slower.
I think that I tend to be more subtle with it and just let it happen at its own speed. Sometimes this is a 20-minute process if kids really, really need to move quite a lot. And sometimes you can use this concept over the course of one single song. If the kids are really connected and into it, and you use the concept, say a movement song where you start out with jumping and stomping and running some more of like the heavier, bigger movements. And then, but over the course of 3 or 4 minutes, by the end, you're stretching and you're yawning and you're breathing. You can use that concept in just a few minutes too, and it can work really well. So I would say that more than anything, I'm just following the lead. So if they need multiple songs, we're going to do multiple songs. If it can be done over the course of one song, it can be done over the course of one song. And I'm definitely not calling it out, generally speaking. I'm just letting it naturally kind of happen.
Mm-hmm. I love that. So potentially it's happening over verses.
Mm-hmm.
And again, like what you said, where you're jumping, dancing, spinning, stomping, and then eventually like maybe you're squeezing more and just bringing it down.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love it.
And sometimes that won't be enough time, but, and so then we keep going with the, maybe we shift to a new song where we're still doing the bigger movements. And then we do, 4 songs instead of, 10 verses or something like that. Yeah.
How can music therapy be integrated into other types of therapy that a kiddo may be receiving?
Lots of beautiful ways. I think music has the ability to reinforce a lot of those therapies. Some of the things that physical therapists ask kids to do, for example, can be very, very painful, and music can provide the motivation for that, and also like the musical structure for that. Like if we're doing walking, we can provide some of that rhythm too, which integrates the brain and can make that movement even easier in some cases. So music can provide that musical structure and also motivation and fun.
Yeah. And I love that when you're talking about physical therapy, like you mentioned pain. I feel like in a lot of conversations, just some people assume that the kiddo just doesn't want to do it. And it's really, there's more to it than that.
Yes.
And despite the pain, like we still ideally need to motivate them to push through that. And music can be a really powerful technique for that.
Yeah. And even one of the things that I did a lot at the hospital was procedural assists. So kids getting their ports accessed if they had ports, kids getting poked in all kinds of ways, and other various procedures that they have to do in the hospital where we can use music to kind of redirect their attention and bring their attention to something else that they enjoy. You have to be a little careful with that one though, because, and I always felt really strongly about this too, that I, as I mentioned in like building a routine at home, like what is kind of this overall purpose of music, where I really believe that it is a very special avenue of expression that can be used for their whole entire lives and an avenue for connection. And so I never wanted to trick a child into, being distracted by music during a medical procedure. So, I'm careful with that. I'm cautious with that. But for a lot of kids, it was exactly what they needed. And there is a way to do it where it's like, there's no tricking involved. In fact, you're working with a child life specialist and they are very clearly explaining everything that's happening. And they're telling, especially older kids, and, if you'd like to engage in some music, this is the way it affects your brain and everything, and getting the buy-in that way. But that can be an amazing, amazing use of music in a hospital.
Yes. Yes. What is the most rewarding part of your job as a music therapist?
I think seeing the kids thrive, seeing kids have a lot of joy in music and connection in music. When I worked in a hospital, it was seeing kids, a lot of kids would get anticipatory nausea and anxiety and things like that coming back into the hospital if they had to come in for multiple treatments. And I always found it very, very satisfying when, instead of coming in very anxious, they would come in and say, "Hey, where's Stephanie? She's late. She told me she'd be here. We have plans. We were going to write a song," something like that. "We paged Stephanie. She said she would meet me here right when I got here, And I always saw that as such a big win of when the kids were asking for music therapy right away, when they came in for chemo or something like that. And that is something that we did with them as we worked on long-term projects so that they could feel like they had something to work on the next time that they came in.
Yes, so much. When I worked in the hospital setting, I was up on the 9th floor, and there was a time when I met the kiddo in the elevator, like not intentionally, but we started music therapy right away.
Love it.
Do you feel like we can overuse music?
I do. Yeah, absolutely. From a sensory regulation perspective, I really hone in on sensory regulation when I'm working with kids. And from a sensory regulation perspective, I like the reminder that music is very, very complex. The most simple song, even a melody, has an implied harmonic structure behind it. It has an implied rhythm. So we can keep it really low stem if we do just the melody, but especially our really, really musical kids will be processing so much more than that, right? But then, if we have a complex song that we're using, say we're using a recorded song, and it has drums, it has bass, it has harmonies, it has an ever shifting harmonic progression and things coming in and out and all of that. I think we have to remember that especially kids in their developing brains, it's really a lot to process. And just like in the way that I like to ask like adults, and I'll ask you, Angie, like, are you a lyrics person first or are you a music person first?
That's a real question?
Yeah. What do you tend to notice first, music or lyrics?
I feel like that's a trick question. Because I just want to say it depends. Because that's what we have.
That's fair.
It depends.
Yeah.
But maybe lyrics more typically.
Okay. Great. Yeah. So and I think some people are like kind of half and half. I am so much a music person first that sometimes I can listen to a song 20 times and then I'll hear the lyrics and I'll be like, oh, that's what this song is about. Unless I'm actively trying to listen to the lyrics, I don't pay attention to them. And, so if anybody's kind of like that, or the flip side, they really notice the lyrics, but they're not really paying attention to the music. I like to give that example as far as like kids need lots of repetition for songs. And they need lots of silence and lots of breaks from music as well in order to process the complexity of music. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you feel like sometimes you can see if a kiddo is leaning more towards lyrics versus music?
I think I can sense or see when kids are requiring more time to process the music information, if that makes sense, or when something is too complex. Sometimes with kids, I will see, for example, sometimes I'll bring a new song. A new song is a place where you learn a lot about a kid and how they're processing music. So sometimes I'll bring a new song and I notice that there's not a lot of interaction coming back to me. And in fact, they're kind of staring and kind of maybe looking at me, but I'm not getting a lot back from them. And I used to think, oh, they don't like the song. And now I've learned, oh, they're processing the song. And so I've learned to put it to the side and maybe, if I have the opportunity to work with them again, bring it back next time and see what happens. And usually what happens next time is they hear that song and they light up, right? Because they've had 4 days, a week or whatever to process all of those layers of that music. And their brain needed that time to process it before they could participate. So this is why I'm always telling like teachers, for example, participation is, from a music therapy perspective and from my perspective, participation is watching, listening, sitting in silence. That is participation because their brain's really busy.
Yes. Can you say more about the shape of a session? You just brought up like integrating a new song, but overall, like a one-on-one session, what does that shape look like? And when do you put in tough stuff, easy stuff, hello, goodbye, all of that?
Yeah. I think it can be different. It is different for every kid based on what we're seeing. But one of the things that I am pretty mindful of is that sensory regulation piece. So for example, I wouldn't introduce a new song if a child is exhibiting any sign of sensory overwhelm or need for a break or need for movement or need for anything like that. I always prioritize this emotional and sensory regulation as step one in anything that we're doing, because we know in Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? We know that kids cannot access things like creativity or deep learning or even connection unless their needs of like safety and stability are met. And being in a state of sensory overwhelm is being unsafe, right? Is feeling unsafe. So we have to get them regulated and feeling safe before we can access things like creativity. So I use the ISO principle. I use a lot of movement. I use a lot of breathing and stretching and things like that to get kids to a very calm and regulated state. And then I start introducing the newer, more academically challenging things. Does that help?
Yeah. Yeah. And then I feel like intuitively, like if you're introducing something, and again, well, that's part of the flexibility of being a live music therapist and not just recordings, but you can see in a moment, like face to face, where maybe you need to stop doing something or shift gears. I feel like most of us are pretty good at shifting gears really quickly.
Yes. Yeah. And you can see it in kids, when you work with kids one-on-one, you spot it and you can start to see it. And then the longer you do it, the more you learn, like, oh, when I see that, I might try and shift and do something a little different here. When I see that, I might shift here. And the beautiful thing about music is it's a generally safe medium to kind of play with and to be flexible in. And there are very few cases where music there are cases where like music can cause seizures and things like that. Very uncommon. But generally speaking, music is a very, very safe modality to explore things like sensory regulation. So it's good to try things. It's good to shift things and see if you can help, because you can always shift and go back the other way if you need to.
Do you have any final words of advice for parents who are considering exploring how music can assist their child's development?
Yeah, I'm kind of similar to that. It's something that is so worth a shot because there's basically no downside. There's basically only upside. And I have known kids that in a complete surprise to their parents, maybe they got music therapy in the hospital or something, the impact of music therapy and then the ripple effect in their life after was very, very profound. They found an avenue for expression. They found a way that they can, access their feelings in a safe way. They found a way that they can write their own music and connect with friends and all of that. And it can be completely life-changing for kids to be able to create music with a music therapist in a very safe space.
Okay, this is the part I'm super excited about. Stephanie has so many resources out there. So can you tell us, I will provide links, but tell us where we can find you. And then let's talk a little bit about maybe the best and easiest ways for parents to access some of the amazing things you've created.
Great. So I have a website called musicforkiddos.com, and we have a lot of this kind of similar information using music from a development perspective on our blog. A ton of music on there, a ton of free music, a ton of free information on there as well. I have quite a few songs. I want to say maybe 70 available via streaming. If you search my name, Stephanie Leavell, and those are movement songs, breathing songs, sensory regulation songs. I have playlists, so many playlists that are scarf songs and things that parents can use at home. We have YouTube, we have Instagram, we have Facebook, all music for kiddos. And then we have a lot of in-depth resources and trainings available at musicforkiddos.com as well.
Yeah.
Oh, and a podcast. So many things. Yeah.
Yes. Tell us about your podcast.
We also have a podcast. That's a great place to start if people like podcasts. It's called the Music for Kiddos podcast. And I think the first episode is about sensory regulation in music. And it's a really great and accessible podcast where you can get a lot of information in a short amount of time.
Mm-hmm. And your Spotify playlists. I mean, you mentioned playlists. I just want to, like, Spotify, she definitely has a lot out there. So if a family was like, what 5 songs should I listen to first? What would your answer be?
I would say Blowing in the Wind is one of them. It's a scarf song. It's very, very calming and relaxing for kids. You don't have to have a scarf. You can have just a scrap of fabric or something like that. Try that song when a child is kind of starting to amp up a little bit. Put on that song, get out scarves, play along with them. You can be kind of amazed at how grounding and calm that can be. Let's see. Well, seasonally, we have 4 seasonal albums. So depending on when you listen to this, we have an album called Fall Songs for Kids, Winter Songs for Kids, Spring Songs for Kids, and Summer Songs for Kids. And there are multiple songs on each of those that kids really, really love. We have a song called Breathe that is a great breathing song, just very simple and calm. One of my favorite songs is called Grizzly Bear Grump, and it's a song where I recommend people. It's a playful song, so don't put it on when your child is grumpy. Put it on when they're feeling playful, and there's nothing kids love more than acting grumpy. And so this is a song where they're feeling good and they're acting grumpy. And it's a sensory regulation song where they're stomping around and they're pretending to be grumpy. And then it gives them tools for helping their body to feel better, like squeezing their arms, giving themselves a deep squeeze, saying grr, stomping their feet, twisting, things like that. And the goal for that kind of song is that they practice those strategies when they're feeling good. And then when they're feeling a little bit grumpy, they might be able to say themselves, I'm feeling a little grizzly bear grumpy. And they might be interested in putting the song on and getting a little sensory regulation in. What else? Let's see. So that was 3 songs. A Gentle Wave is one of my favorites. It's another breathing song. And, Busy Like a Bee is a great, like, active movement song. It's kind of fun, and there's running and jumping and dancing and all that. Movement songs are kind of my jam. So I have a ton of movement songs on Spotify.
Yes. Thank you. Are there any projects coming up that you'd like to share with us?
I am working on a more extensive course right now. It should be out in April or May. So if you're interested in that, it's kind of taking all of the concepts that I like to talk about: sensory regulation, movement songs, the ISO principle, intentional use of music for bringing energy down and bringing energy up, and songwriting and all kinds of things. I'm putting it all in one big course. So if you're interested in something a little bit more in depth, I'd recommend getting on our email newsletter, and then we'll make sure that information gets sent to you. Also, if you're on our email newsletter, we send out a free song every month. So that's a fun place to go to, and you can get on there at musicforkiddos.com/newsletter.
Perfect. Do you feel like your courses, a lot of them are for music therapists, CMTE courses, and the one that you're talking about right now, I'm assuming, is geared towards music therapists?
Music therapists, music educators, and other professionals who use music. So preschool teachers, kindergarten teachers, first grade teachers. And so it would be suitable for somebody who is maybe a musician themselves, who is a parent and interested in more in-depth information. I'm keeping it musically pretty easy. So you don't need to be like going to college to learn music or anything like that. I'm trying to keep it pretty easy, so it's more concept based than this is how to play the songs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Are there any of your courses that you would recommend for a speech language pathologist, occupational therapist, physical therapist?
Our sensory songs course might be one that's interesting. Some of the information is going to be repetitive for an occupational therapist, of course, because they are the experts in sensory regulation. But I did that course with an occupational therapist and another music therapist. And so there is a lot of information there. And then I have 12 songs in that course that I share as part of using music for sensory regulation.
Great. And your recorded songs, they are beautiful. They have accompaniment. I feel like almost all of them.
Mm-hmm.
But while you're in a session, are there times when you don't use accompaniment?
There are times, actually pretty frequently, if I like my hands to be free and again, being mindful of how much a child is processing. So with some kids, I really, really like to just sing. And if a song is particularly calm, I like to sing, or, if calm is needed, excuse me, that's what I meant to say. If calm is needed, then I find myself using less accompaniment and more just my voice for that flexibility as well. But the song I mentioned, Blowing in the Wind, doesn't have any accompaniment to it. It's just my voice. And I love things like I love scarf songs. I love a canopy scarf. If you don't have a canopy scarf, you have to get one. They're like 9 feet by 9 feet, and they're just a big scarf. It's like a calm parachute. And you know how parachutes are just so stimulating. And for whatever reason, a giant scarf is not. It's like the exact opposite. And it's like, I find with kids, even meeting a brand new group of kids, I can get that out and it can go from really lots and lots of excitement to calm right away. It's incredible.
Wow. I love it. Okay. And then, so with your recorded songs, if parents are trying to use them, then of course, I feel like you've given permission, or we don't need to give permission, but if they don't have accompaniment, like even within a session, yeah, if I want to use my hands, unless I have an intern or, somebody by my side, there are a lot of times when my song doesn't have accompaniment and it still is incredibly powerful and sometimes definitely the right way to go so that we're not overstimulating. But what about like a family listening to one of your songs in the car and got the parent and a kiddo or two singing along within the car? Do you feel like that's still helpful and therapeutic?
Absolutely. Yeah, I absolutely do. Music therapy research tells us that live music can have a greater effect. I think because of the flexible nature of live music, we can react and respond in the moment and change the music in the moment. But that is not realistic for everybody to have available to them at any given time. And so I'm really intentional about my recordings and trying to kind of bridge that gap where we say, yes, in a perfect world, a music therapist would be in your car, being able to kind of do this flexible music, but that is not realistic. And so here are some options for recordings that are as close as I hope you can get to that,
Yeah. Stephanie, thank you so much. Do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share?
I don't think so. I appreciate you having me.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to provide links to all your resources because Stephanie has fantastic resources. I am so grateful for all your work.
Thank you.
Thank you all so much for joining us today on Cue the Magic, Sing a New Song. It's been such a joy to have Stephanie Leavell from Music for Kiddos with us, sharing her expertise, her creativity, and her passion for using music to help kids thrive. And before we go, I want to leave you with a fun song that I love using in a group setting. It's called The Drum Song and is on our album Songs for Kids on the Autism Spectrum. This one doesn't have any accompaniment and is filled with lots of starts and stops, making it a perfect way to engage kids. Here's one of the reasons why I think it's so effective. When all the drums in the group are slightly different, it sparks curiosity and excitement. And as soon as the kids realize they'll get a chance to play each drum, they really dig in and get creative. Plus, you'll notice how the instructions are built right into the song, which means there's no need for extra words. It's simple, fun, and encourages exploration. Stay tuned for more magical music moments, and don't forget to check out Music for Kiddos for amazing resources. Thanks again for listening, and if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe and leave a review to help spread the word. I'll see you next time.
Pass the drum to the right, to the right. Keep it upside down, keep it upside down. Pass the drum, pass the drum. Turn your drum right side up. 1, 2, 3, 4. Drum, drum, drum. We are playing the drum, drum, drum. Drum, drum, drum. We are playing the drum, drum, drum. And stop. Pass it to the right, pass it to the right. Everybody gets a new drum, everybody gets a new drum. 1, 2, 3, 4. Drum, drum, drum. We are playing the drum, drum, drum. Drum, drum, drum. We are playing the drum, drum, drum. And stop. Pass it to the right, pass it to the right. Everybody gets a new drum, everybody gets a new drum. 1, 2, 3, 4. Drum, drum, drum. We are playing the drum, drum, drum. Drum, drum, drum. We are playing the drum, drum, drum. And stop. Pass it to the right, pass it to the right. Everybody gets a new drum. This is our last turn. 1, 2, 3, 4. Drum, drum, drum. We are playing the drum, drum, drum. Drum,